Okay, the purpose of this video is to introduce to you what a running record is. A running record is a reading assessment for teachers to use to determine what level on a scale of A through Z a student is reading at according to Fountas and Pinnel. The reading kit that you will receive from the Fairview reading specialist will include a number of books just like this. And they are leveled from A through T. We have letters A through T. This one happens to be for level L, honeybees. And what a running record is that a student will sit down and read a passage from the level book that you think that the student is leveled at. And what you will do is follow along on a sheet of paper that looks like this. This is a passage of 55 words that's aligned with the book Honeybees. And you'll follow along, very similar to a fluency check. And there are a number of symbols that you will tick off as the student reads. If a student reads a word correctly, you just put a check over it. If there are errors, there are different types of errors, and we will go over the types of symbols we will use for those errors. Okay, so here are some samples of errors. What I've done is use the same sentence, very simple sentence, the dog ran, and in blue I have used a number of symbols to indicate certain types of errors and certain types of marks that are not errors but we want to keep track of. So at the very top you'll notice that there's a line over the word dog and a dash. What that means is that the student simply omitted the word dog. The ran. Well, the student left out the word dog, so you just put the line over it and a dash. That means that's an error. It counts as an error, but this symbol simply tells us that the student skipped the word. The next line shows that the student has substituted the word dog for dag. Perhaps the student made an error in decoding the word dog and thought that it said dag. Well, it's not like the student really omitted it. He or she simply put in the wrong word. So go ahead and put a dash or a line over the word that was mistaken and write down what the student actually said. And sometimes you'll find that students insert words that aren't there, imaginary words. The dog has ran. Well, the actual text doesn't have the word has, but the student inserted it. So that's an error, and as you might guess, simply put a caret and then insert the words that the student used. These are three different types of errors. What we have here is omission, substitution, and insertion. And the fourth type of errors right here, it's signified by the letter T as in told. The student perhaps struggled with the word dog so much and chose not to attempt it that you as a teacher simply, for the sake of fluency, decided to tell the student that the word is dog. So if you tell the student what a word is, that's an error, as you can imagine, but you will simply put a T above it, indicating to yourself that you told the student the word. So these are four different types of errors that you'll keep track of. Underneath are two other types of symbols that you'll want to follow along as well. If a student simply repeats a word or a segment of words, the dog ran, the student repeated it, so bracket the words that were repeated and simply put a R. That's a means to allow you to follow the fluency of a student, but it's not necessarily an error. You won't count this as an error, but go ahead and still mark that. And down here you'll notice that this is very similar to up here, a substitution error, but you'll notice the SC next to it, and the SC simply means that the student realized his or her error. May have said the dag ran, paused and thought about it and said, oh no, the dog ran. Well, that's a self-correct. So go ahead and put an SC next to that. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and demonstrate it. Jean, my wife, is going to read from page 6 and 7, which correlates with the paper that you'll have as a teacher. And I'm going to put the camera over the paper that I'm going to be checking off, and you can see a running record in action. Okay, so just give us a moment.
Worker bees. Worker bees build honeycombs inside the hive. There are small openings in the combs called calls. The queen lays eggs in some cells. Worker bees protect the hive too. They will sting anything that threatens it. When worker bees leave the hive, they landed on flowers and start to sip a sweet juice called nectar.
Okay, so if you take a look at the text that was read, and I apologize that it's a little bit blurry, so I'm going to hold it. It might be a little bit shaky. You'll notice that what I'll do is use a pen here. The word combs, she said the word comes, and right above it, what I did was I put a line over the word combs and wrote down what Jean actually said, comes. Here, the word cells, as a student, she struggled and actually called it the word calls, and that's another error. So along this line, in the error column here, I'm going to say that there were 2 errors right there. Next line, you have the word lays. She simply said lay, but then she went back and self-corrected, and right here you see a SC, and that is a self-correct. So that's not really an error. I wouldn't mark that in the error column. What I'll do is actually put that in the self-correct column. We're keeping track of it, but we're not going to count it as an error. Underneath here, here's another symbol, the R, which hopefully by now you'll realize is repeat. She repeated not just the word it, but threatens it. So I bracketed both of those words, and she repeated that. That's really not a self-correction. It's just a symbol. It's neither an error or a self-correct, but we keep that there just to later on if we want to analyze fluency and things like that. And down below, this is the word land. I know it's a little blurry. What she said was landed. She used a past tense version of it, but it's still a substitution of a word, and so that is an error. And then over here, she inserted start to. I've always practiced that as 1 error, so that's 2 errors right there. Even though she inserted 2 words there, I practiced it as 1 error. So that's 2 errors. 1 error, 2nd error. And so in this line, in the error column, I go ahead and put 2. Okay? And the last line was perfect. I simply ticked it off. Which was just as well because I was running behind schedule there. I was making so many marks that I had fallen behind by a line, but I was lucky enough to catch up. So that's one thing as a teacher that you'll want to do is make sure you get comfortable enough to follow along, make notations, and still be on pace with the reader. Make sure you're listening to the reader. You'll notice here we have 4 errors, 2 plus 2 at the bottom, 4 errors, and 1 self-correct. And out of 55, out of 55 words, she read 51 words correctly, 4 errors, and that averages out to a 94% accuracy. Total self-corrects is 1, as we mentioned. Okay. Now, another aspect of the running record that you'll want to pay attention to is on the back there will be questions. I don't know if this particular, yep, this one actually has a few questions. So you'll ask the student some of the questions, and gauge how well the student answered those questions. When you're doing a running record, it's not just a matter of paying attention to the accuracy. So 94 is fine. Anything between 93 and 97% is what you would call instructional. And you want students reading on an instructional level. If you're at 98% or above, it's independent. Kids are reading that. It's text that it's easy for them, not necessarily useful for instructional purposes, unless you're solely paying attention to more abstract sort of comprehension activities. And then if a student is reading at below 93%, we call that frustrational, and really that's text that it's simply way too frustrating for a student to read. Just simply so many errors that the student simply loses track of the meaning of the story. And those are not the right types of text to be using when you're instructing on skills and strategies. So that's the whole purpose of the accuracy, the 94%. So this is a good percentage in terms of accuracy. You'll notice that Jean read slow, which is fine, but it was still rather fluent. I wouldn't say it's the most fluent. On a scale of 1 to 3, I'd probably give it a 2. And depending on how Jean answers the questions in the comprehension section, I may move her up to the next level or down, or keep her at L. It really depends on a mixture of how accurate she reads, how fluently she reads, and how well she answers questions related to the text. So I'm going to have Jean, there's Jean by the way, say hello, and this is our kitchen. But anyways, I'm going to have her turn it back to me. The reason we're doing this, well, there are multiple reasons that we're doing this video, but one of the primary reasons we're doing this video is so that everybody sees the same thing. Our reading specialists at Fairview are, what they'll do is continue to answer some questions for you, and they'll also demonstrate some of the symbols and answer some questions related to that as well. And they will also read to you a sample passage, and you'll follow along with your own running record so you can get your first taste of conducting one of these assessments. I think that once you get the hang of it, you'll realize that it's real easy to do. It is more time consuming than a fluency check, but it is also more in depth because you're no longer simply looking at words per minute. You're not looking at simple accuracy. You're really taking into account accuracy, fluency, and comprehension, and making a good judgment of where a kid's best fit is in terms of levels. So what Jean read to me, assuming that she answers the questions correctly, it looks like honeybees at level L is a good place for her to start. And what I will do as a class is collect all the L's together, and that will be the basis of one of my small group lessons. All right, thank you very much.